responsible for restaurant marketing, this one's for you. The Restaurant Marketing Workshop is happening June 2nd and 3rd in Boston. Save 20% at restaurantmarketingworkshop.com using the code PODCAST. Welcome to the Pizza Marketplace podcast. I'm Mandy Detwiler, editor of Pizza Marketplace, and I'm here today with Bryan Ketelhut, Vice President of Franchise and Business Development for Little Caesars. Did I get that right, Bryan?
That is perfect. So, spot on.
Well, thanks so much for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about everything Little Caesars and pizza related.
Well, first, tell me how you got started with Little Caesars.
So my history kind of goes back to quite a while, a long time ago. So kind of grew up in the business, let's say. One of my good friends growing up, his father was a pretty large franchisee here in Metro Detroit. So we grew up going into the stores and kind of behind the scenes and seeing it, and was always a dream of mine to really be a franchise or a business owner. And I just love the brand. Being from Metro Detroit, you're kind of engulfed in it, right? It's Little Caesars is very prevalent here, as well as with all the sports teams and everything too, the family's involved in. So when I started working after college, and then was able to raise enough money to open up a franchise. So I actually was offered the opportunity to open up a franchise down in Dallas, Texas. Moved down to Dallas, got a store open down there. There's a high volume, great location in South Oak Cliff, which is a kind of a section of DFW. And after a few years of having that store, about 4 years, I had an opportunity to buy a territory reservation agreement to build multiple locations out in Rhode Island. So other part of the country, part of the deal is, hey, you know what? You have to move out to Rhode Island, of course. So I eventually sold the store in Dallas and moved out to Rhode Island. Kind of on a personal matter, I met my wife, who's also from Michigan, in Texas, and she moved with me. We were just dating at the time out to Rhode Island. And then after, got a couple stores open out in Rhode Island. And then my wife, at that time, now she was my wife, was offered a job back in Detroit. So we wanted to relocate back here more for family reasons, to start a family and be closer to our parents and everything. And so I sold those stores out in Rhode Island and relocated back here, wanted to stick with the brand, loved the brand. So I reached out to my contacts that I had at the corporate office, and they offered me a position on their franchise services team. Spent a few years overseeing the Southwest U.S. and then had an offer to work on our non-traditional development on the U.S. development team. So I spent probably the last 9 years working on non-traditional development for the brand, and had some other leadership positions on the development team with traditional as well. And then I was offered the opportunity to oversee the whole domestic franchising team.
Awesome. Well, you really have kind of come up with the brand, haven't you?
I have, yeah. So it's, I'll tell you, the nice thing is with Little Caesars is a lot of longevity with the colleagues here, and with the franchise community as well. The gentleman who oversaw franchise development for quite a long time that I worked under retired after 45 years with the brand. And that is not uncommon, right? We have a lot of people, every year we do our service awards, and I'll tell you, the list of 20 plus, 30 plus, 40 plus years is pretty deep. So it says a lot about the company.
Well, Little Caesars is kind of known for its streamlined operations. From a development perspective, how does that simplicity make the brand more attractive to a prospective franchisee compared to more complex QSR models?
Sure. I would say a couple different things, right? We focus on value, quality, and convenience. Is our big messaging, right? We were created hot and ready about over 20 years ago, and we've always been a value brand, right? We cater to that value consumer, and so really that adding in with our flexibility on footprints, right? For us, and also the investment as well into our brand compared to other QSRs.
Okay. Well, you have a company-owned supply chain, which is a massive differentiator. How does that vertical integration help your franchisees kind of stay insulated from the price volatility that we've seen in the industry lately?
Sure. Well, having our supply chain, so it's called Blue Line Food Service, right, and equipment. We have 20 plus distribution centers around the country. And I'll give you a fun fact. There's actually Little Caesars Mushroom Farms is what it originally started off as in the 1970s, which engulfed into Blue Line Food Service now. But I think having that, controlling the distribution channel as well is very important to a lot of franchisees. When we're able to purchase food products or equipment wise, right, more in bulk, we're able to keep those costs lower for our partners.
Now, the compact store footprint is kind of a hallmark of the brand. How does the smaller square footage requirement change the game for franchisees when they're hunting for prime real estate?
Sure. So it plays a big factor, right? So we have everything from where, you look at the bigger box QSRs, right? Where they need, 2,500 to 3,500 square feet freestanding locations. We build stores like that, but primarily we build anywhere from 12 to 1,500 square foot inline units. Those are the majority of our stores across the country. However, we have a couple other options, right? We have, if you're going into a non-traditional type format, we can go as small as 450 square feet. We look at everything and everything in between as well. We have traditional store formats that we have gone into 700, 800, 900 square feet, really depending on the layout. But our architects do an amazing job on drawing stores to try to maximize space. We also recently, even kind of take it to another level, partnered with a company in Las Vegas. They built our first container or pod modular unit store, which can fit on about a quarter acre, right? So if someone's looking for a freestanding location, but they can't really find that competitive 3/4 to a full acre site, we can put one of these onto an acre location or a quarter acre location.
Well, speaking of the pod locations, how do these modular designs change your speed to market when entering a new territory?
Absolutely. So with the modular locations, they're built with this one company. They're built all on site in Las Vegas. It takes about 90 days for them to build the full container unit, right? So what we look at is, all right, if you have a quarter acre lot, typically with a stick build, you have to do all of your site work first, and then you start your stick build. With this, you can do those both in parallel. So while that 90 days for them to build the modular unit, bless you, and then for the site work, you can do that in parallel. So in a perfect world, right, they'd kind of come together and be completed all at one time. And then they're put on a tractor trailer, picked up on a crane, dropped, and some other components put together like a puzzle. And then you're off to the races. So
now, when you're looking for new franchisees, what exactly are you looking for in a great franchisee for Little Caesars?
Sure. So we want people that are going to be involved in the business, right? Either, if you're an individual mom and pop, like we started off with building with mom, we call them mom and pops, right? This is their first business venture. And they build one store, and gradually over time, they build more stores and add more to their portfolios. And then we also work with or look for multi-unit, multi-brand operators. We call mumbos. So, a big operator with other QSR brands that maybe they're, in the market that we have available. Maybe they're built out, right, with the current brand, and they want to diversify their portfolios and add a pizza brand to that. So, we want strong operations, whether it's an individual owner or a multi-brand owner, people that are going to be involved in the business.
Can you walk us through the support ecosystem for a new franchisee? How do you bridge the gap between signing the agreement and selling that first hot and ready?
So we hold your hand throughout the whole process. Being a family-owned company, I always stress that, our colleagues, all the colleagues are treated as family, but also all the franchise partners as well. We hold your hand, whether it's your first time, right, or you're a seasoned veteran, right, in building restaurants. You still have to learn our way, right? So the minute that you, sign on for a franchise with us, our real estate team immediately starts to work with you on finding that right location. They can also assist with the LOI and lease components. And then once you have a signed lease, you immediately go to our construction team. Our construction team, we're not building the stores for you, but they're more of a PM, a project manager in a way, and a liaison between the company and your general contractor. We also provide the full design sets for you. And then once you're kind of getting a little bit closer, right, to grand opening, our marketing team are assigned a marketing manager as well as a franchise operations manager. You will attend 6 weeks of training at one of our corporate locations around the country to get your full franchise training. But then you really start working with your franchise services partner. And then honestly, kind of full circle, come right back to us. We're always a main point of contact for you on the U.S. development team. And then we work with you on future growth plans, right?
Well, as you said, marketing is a huge part of the brand's identity. How do you balance national brand power with giving franchisees the tools needed to win in their specific local markets?
So we have, you're assigned a marketing manager that is specific to, a certain couple DMAs, we call it. So they have an assigned territory and anything that falls in. So they work very closely on what a different marketing plan for each of those markets that they work in. You also have a grand opening marketing spend, right? That we work with a couple different outside agencies as well. More of a local feel to it. But they work with you on any that LSM, we call it local store marketing, and put a right plan in place, right? So, because something that you may open up in New York City or the middle of Iowa is going to be completely different. So they work to more tailor it to you.
Now, the Elevate restaurant design represents a new era for the brand's look. What was the primary goal being for that aesthetic shift, and how has customer response been for that?
So the last design that we did was back in 2012, and that was the i7 image. Typically, most brands update their lobby image, every 5 to 8 years or so. So we try to stay on pace with that. But that was more of a darker wood look. It's typically what most of the stores you'll see out there now. So we really, the shift to having more brighter colors, lighter woods, more clean lines. That is really what was behind the design on Elevate. That was launched in April of this past year to the franchise community. Great reception on it. I think it's probably too early to tell with the consumer piece on that. However, all new restaurants that are being drawn today, actually as of last April, are being drawn with that new Elevate look. So over the next 3 years, you will see a lot of majority of the existing stores converted to that new imaging. So
that orange is just such a signature color.
It's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. How does the brand approach non-traditional spaces like airports, college campuses, or stadiums? Are there specific formats that you're prioritizing now?
No, I'll tell you, overseeing that part of the business for quite a long time, we're trying to meet guests where they already are, right? So we are, whether it's higher education, travel, plazas, gas and convenience, airports, military bases. There's many different avenues that you could go down, really, where you could place Little Caesars, even amusement parks, right? Or gaming facilities, casinos. Really what we've tried to really approach is we take a couple of those avenues and really dive in deep. A lot of those are relationships, long-term relationships you have to build with concessionaire partners, like your Delaware North, Levy, Aramark, Sodexo. So we focused heavily a couple years ago on higher education. So more on the university college campuses. And we've opened up a handful of locations within those facility types. We also, a lot of people know us, the Illich family owns some gaming. They own 2 casinos. And so we were able to place Little Caesars within both of those gaming facilities as well and test the product, right? Test how does it work? Does it fare well? And we saw great success. So that's another avenue that we've been going down, is approaching different casinos and trying to get into more of those, as well as the military as well. So we've been working through different military installations, working very closely with NEXCOM, which is part of the U.S. Navy, or represents the Navy in the Marine Corps bases. And we opened up kind of a highlight was we won a bid. Those are all government RFPs. So it's a long process, right? You have to bid on them. but we recently opened up a year ago in Pearl Harbor, which was
Right.
a pretty big win for us because that's our founder, Mr. Illich, was actually stationed there when he was in the Marine Corps. So.
Okay. Okay. Well, with the rise of third-party delivery and digital ordering, how has the physical layout of the stores evolved to handle the pizza portal and high volume pickup?
As you see with our new Elevate design, we're adding more portals, right? More customer pickup locations at the front for those online orders, for those DoorDash deliveries orders. So when we first started online ordering back in, don't quote me on this, probably 2019, late 2019, we had a program where we installed up one portal in every location across the country. And what we realized is most stores needed 2 or 3 portals. And, that's just how fast the traction on our online ordering platform and the use of the portals came. So we started, most stores now have 2 portals, some have 3, and even 4, we have some locations. The new Elevate design actually has now sections right next to it where it holds some of the cold items, right? Like your sodas and other side items. So when someone comes to pick up, instead of grabbing your product out of the portal and then having to go over to the cooler and pick up your soda or picking up dip cups or other kind of components, it's all right there kind of lined together with them. So it makes it easier for even the third-party delivery drivers as well.
Right. Well, let's talk about that NFL partnership. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Very cool. Yeah. So we love the partnership with the NFL. We are in negotiations right now, for obviously to discuss a further partnership with that. But out of that partnership, we also were able to do a lot of kind of back to my old world, right? A non-traditional, a lot of different stadium concession deals with local teams. So, initially when we launched the NFL partnership, we went right into Ford Field with the Detroit Lions. Makes sense, right? Because we have the other 2 arenas right in Metro Detroit here with the New Orleans Saints, the Miami Dolphins, Tennessee Titans, Pittsburgh Steelers, Philadelphia Eagles. So we had a stadium concession component too, which is really cool because that helped us launch other stadium concessions within the collegiate, different sports teams as well as some minor league teams as well.
Now, how do you keep a legacy brand feeling cool and relevant to younger guests?
So I contribute that to really our marketing. If you look back, since, the 80s and 90s, right? Since I've been kind of, when I was a little kid, not to age myself, but the marketing was always geared. It was a fun, quirky marketing component, right? And that's what I always remember because, kids drive your business, right? So we catered to kids, right? We catered to those families. And to keep them engaged, but also even the current marketing, right, with Call of Duty. We're kind of in the gaming platform now. We market in that with the sports teams. We were with the Fantastic Four movie, right? We market in those kind of components, but also with, you walk into our stores, right? They're fun. It's bright. It's light, especially with this new Elevate design. And then also our menu products, we're pizza, right? It's a fun product. It's a family product, and we're at a value too. So you kind of cater to whether it's, large families to all the way through, let's say even college kids, right? Love our product because it's more of a value to them.
Looking at the global landscape, what's the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity for Little Caesars in, let's say, the next 5 years?
The biggest opportunity for us, obviously our international growth, and I only work on the domestic component, but there's so much white space right around the world. Currently we're in about 30 different countries. We're adding new countries every year, and it's been a huge success for us. But there's still a lot of white space internationally, but also domestically too. For us, we have a lot of opportunity around the country, but big opportunity in the Northeast and the Northwest part of the U.S. And recently we've gained a lot of traction throughout the boroughs in New York and up. So
I guess my last question, and I always ask my guests this, if you had a piece of advice to give to an aspiring franchisee, what would you tell them?
Be involved in your business, right? Be involved in the day-to-day operations on it. And as you grow, build your bench, right? Take care of your employees. And then you can start handing the keys over to them. And that's something that I learned, when I was a franchisee was, you make this big investment, right? I lived in that store initially. It took me a little bit longer probably to hand the keys over to someone, but as you grow, you kind of build your bench, right? And then that's typically how most of the very successful multi-unit operators, but partner with a brand that is going to support you. And that's what Little Caesars does. I mean, we're really the only family-owned company still that's out there. That's not, we've been owned by the same family since 1959, our founders. And it is truly a family feel. And that, like I said, I stressed earlier, is not just to the colleagues, but also to our franchise partners as well.
All right. Well, this has been great. We are out of time. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And hope you enjoy the rest of your day. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
That'll do it for this episode of the Pizza Marketplace podcast, and we'll catch you next time.